April 2nd, and this is your coffee break on the HAN Network, live in studio after a bit of a snow delay today and after we were on the road last week for the HAN FCAC tour. I'm Kate Czaplinski with the latest local news, including a purse snatcher in Fairfield, the impacts of another snow day for many, and much more. Frank Rita will have your forecast and a Nutmeg sports update, and of course Donald Ang will join us later to take a look back on this day in history. But first, the big news today is the April snowstorm that blanketed the area and led to a big mess this morning. Now, while roads appear to be clearing now, slick roads were reported around southwestern Connecticut today, and we've had several reports of rollovers and other accidents. Now, in Easton, Morehouse Road between Banks Road and Bears Road was closed at 9:30 due to a rollover there. Thankfully, no serious injuries were reported, but Easton police at the time wrote that roads were extremely dangerous, and they were asking everyone to stay off the roads until the storm passed. Now, the Fairfield Fire Department also reported that one person was taken to the hospital after a crash on Wilson Street this morning. Fairfield Public Safety warns all residents at the time to drive carefully today, according to a Facebook post from the fire department. They said roads are extremely slippery. And some schools started with a delay this morning that turned into a full cancellation, but New Canaan was one district that went forward with its school day, though a bus did get stuck in the snow around 10:15 this morning, and that was on Summer Sweet Lane. Now, just a little later, we're going to talk about how these snow days will affect spring and summer breaks for some school districts, and we'll also have more on your forecast a little later with Frank. But in other news, 2 Milford firefighters were injured battling a house fire Sunday evening that severely damaged a single-family home on Naugatuck Avenue. Now, fire dispatchers received a 911 call at about 6:30, reporting a fire on the front porch of that home located at 903 Naugatuck Avenue. Now, the first arriving units encountered a large fire on the first floor that was extending up to the second floor of that 2.5-story home. That, according to Fire Battalion Chief Anthony Fabrizi. Now, a hose line was quickly advanced into the structure in an effort to suppress that fire. However, some strong winds fueled the progression of that blaze into the second floor and attic areas of that home. Now, firefighters fought that stubborn blaze for more than 45 minutes, Fabrizi said. He said that the majority of the house suffered severe damage, leaving that home uninhabitable by the 3 occupants. Now, one of those residents had tried unsuccessfully to extinguish that fire with a garden hose before firefighters arrived. Fabrizi said that caused a delay in the reporting of that fire. Now, 2 firefighters were also injured, and both were treated on the scene by the fire department paramedics and then transported to Milford Hospital for evaluation. Additional information on their condition was not immediately available. Now, a Milford Red Cross representative did arrive to provide assistance for those displaced occupants. Milford's Fire Marshal Division is now investigating that fire. And in other news, 2 men are in custody after a gunpoint home invasion on White Plains Road in Trumbull early Saturday morning. Now, according to police, 30-year-old Juan Rivera and 42-year-old Marvin Allen, both of Bridgeport, broke into a Trumbull home and threatened the resident with a handgun at about 5 a.m. Now, police pursued that fleeing suspected vehicle into Bridgeport, where it ran off the road and rolled over several times. Now, both suspects were treated at Bridgeport Hospital for non-life-threatening injuries. Police also recovered a Smith & Wesson caliber handgun from the suspected vehicle at the scene. Now, Rivera and Allen were both charged with home invasion. In addition, Rivera was charged with criminal possession of a firearm, as well as first-degree burglary, threatening, unlawful restraint, and several other criminal and vehicle charges. Now, there were no injuries to anyone at the home or to any police officers in that incident. No police vehicles were involved in that crash. Bridgeport police and firefighters investigated the crash scene, and Trumbull police are continuing their investigation. Now, they believe that the victim's resident was specifically targeted and was not randomly selected. And a fight inside of Nutmeg Bowl in Fairfield Saturday night led to shots fired. On March 31st at about 11:59 p.m., Fairfield police received a 911 call from Nutmeg Bowl on Villa Avenue. Officers determined that a verbal argument between 26-year-old Jose Maldonado and another individual occurred inside the bowling alley. The men made threats to each other before going outside to the parking lot. Now, police determined that in the parking lot, one man may have attempted to strike the other with his car, and in the process, Jose Maldonado fired a pistol at that car. Now, no one was injured during the incident, but officers located a bullet hole in the rear side door of that vehicle, in addition to a spent shell casing matching a pistol that was located in a vehicle of one of the suspects involved. Now, Jose Maldonado, who lives on James Street in Bridgeport, was arrested and charged with first-degree reckless endangerment and unlawful discharge of a firearm. He's scheduled to appear in court on April 12th. And the Stamford Advocate reports that a former West Hill High School basketball coach, now coaching in New Canaan, was arrested over the weekend after he was allegedly found in possession of 20 bags of heroin. 30-year-old Jose Amor of Davenport Drive was charged with possession of narcotics as well as possession of narcotics with intent to sell. Now, he was released after posting a $10,000 bond. Now, the weekend arrest of Amor, who was charged nearly 2 years ago with hindering prosecution for allegedly tipping off one of his basketball players suspected of a shooting in Stamford, resulted from a suspicious person call at West Avenue Shell Station on Friday night. That, according to Captain Dietrich Hone. Well, when officers arrived, they interviewed Amor outside of his car. Officers looking around could see in plain view a partially open container lying on the passenger seat, which appeared to have possible contraband inside. An officer removed that contraband and then found 20 folds of heroin. Now, while Amor was being booked, police found several Percocet pills on him, as well as a pill grinder and a straw with powder residue on it. And in other news, on Sunday afternoon, an off-duty state trooper saved a man who had overdosed on opiates. Around 4:30 p.m., Troop G received multiple 911 calls about a vehicle stopped on the right shoulder of I-95 northbound just prior to exit 36 in Milford, with a man outside of that vehicle seizing. Now, an off-duty trooper was in the area and responded to the scene, and upon his arrival, he found numerous passers-by caring for that 22-year-old male who was unresponsive and with shallow labored breathing. While that trooper recognized numerous signs of opiate overdose and administered his assigned intranasal Naxalone. Now, the male then began to regain consciousness shortly after the arrival of EMS. He was transported to Milford Hospital, where he was released a short time later. Now, police say the quick action of that off-duty trooper, Matthew Hancock, was absolutely paramount in the ability to save that person from serious injury or death. Now, with all this snow in the last few weeks, exactly when summer break will arrive for most kids is a big question for some districts. Now, some schools started the morning with a delay, including Monroe and Region 9, but later decided to close. Now, in Ridgefield, today was the 12th snow day that the district has had to call. Our Ridgefield Press reports that the last day of school is now Thursday, June 28th. And one Board of Education secretary told the press back in March that the district has never had to go to the last day in June in her 20-plus years in town. Now, June 30th is a Saturday this year, so only one more day remains available. Now, today's snow also forced Trumbull schools to close for the 9th time this year, an unusually high number for that district. School Superintendent Gary Chalfie said he would meet with school staff officials tomorrow to determine a course of action to make up the latest snow day. Now, currently the last day of school for students is scheduled to be on Thursday, June 21st. Whatever happens, though, Chalfie said the school system's April break will not be shortened. Now, in Wilton, the school board is now revisiting its calendar for the next school year. Our Wilton Bulletin reports that this year school started after Labor Day, and students now go to school until June 27th, although graduation will be held on June 23rd. The last day of school had been scheduled initially for June 15th. Today's storm is expected to chip away at next week's April break in Wilton. The superintendent had said last month that any further snow closings would mean students would lose April 13th as a vacation day. Now, as we mentioned earlier, our own New Canaan Advertiser reports that today the New Canaan Public Schools used a delayed opening, just 2 hours, so that school would be conducted, and the delay does not count as a snow day. Now, they actually have used delayed openings instead of closings for the past 3 snowfalls, but it was very unusual for school buses to be running when it was snowing so hard as it was this morning. And as we reported earlier, one of those school buses actually got stuck around 10:15 a.m. Now, Fairfield and Darien schools also opened on time today. Fairfield Superintendent of Schools Dr. Tony Jones tweeted the decision before 5 a.m., but around 9:20, Jones tweeted an apology to that decision, saying in part, "My apology for the challenging travel conditions this morning. We wake up early and assess the weather based on all known information. Ultimately," she said, "the decision is mine to make, and today I just got it wrong." She said this was a bad early morning snow call. Well, on that note, we're going to throw it over to Frank Granito for a look at the forecast. Frank.
All right, thank you, Kate. And hopefully we are seeing what are the final snowflakes falling now of this spring. That from a little bit earlier today, you could see it was a little heavier about 15 minutes ago, much lighter now around Fairfield County, and it should be done by 1 o'clock. We may even see a break and a little bit of sunshine later on this afternoon as temperatures rise up into the mid-40s. Before tonight, we'll see increasing cloudiness later on tonight. It'll be a low of 33, and then the next 2 days, well, it doesn't look like it's going to get much better as it will be a wash. A lot of rain coming our way this week. Starting tomorrow, we'll see intervals of rain through the afternoon and into tomorrow night. Considerable cloudiness tomorrow night, and it starts to get much windier Wednesday. The rain picks up again. It'll be heavier at early points in the day, starting to turn to a drizzle later on, but the big issue going to be wind gusts up over 30 miles per hour on Wednesday. So that's something that we will be keeping an eye on. That'll do it for this weather update. Let's go back over to Kate.
All right, thanks so much, Frank. And we're going to step out for a break. When we come back, Donald Eng will take a look back on this day in history. Frank has your Nutmeg Sports Update, and we have a lot more local news coming up after this.
Voted Best Gourmet to Go in Fairfield County, Palmer's extensive menu offers everything you'll need to make your next event easy and delicious. Whether you're hosting a small get-together or planning a large celebration, they've got you covered breakfast through dessert. Order online at palmersdarien.com or call 203-655-2077.
Welcome back to this April 2nd edition of your Coffee Break on the HAN Network. Time to take a look back on this day in history with Donald Eng. Don.
Well, Kate, we're focusing on some well-known people today. Perhaps some of them you didn't quite know the whole story about. First, starting with 1513, Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon first lands in what is now the U.S. state of Florida. He named the state after the abundance of wild flowers growing there. Now, the story about the Fountain of Youth first appeared decades after his death in 1521. There is no evidence to support that story. And anyway, De Leon was far too busy searching for gold and working the natives to death to traipse around sampling pond water. Now we go to 1917, World War I. President Woodrow Wilson asks Congress for a declaration of war on Germany. You probably remember the Lusitania sinking as a cause of World War I, but did you know that the most proximate cause of the U.S. entry was actually the so-called Zimmerman Note? The U.S. had been declared itself neutral, but Germany foresaw the U.S. entry into the war on the side of the Allies and had tried to recruit Mexico into the war, promising the return of much of Texas and California if Mexico helped the Central Powers win by engaging the U.S. in a border war. Now, Mexico actually declined to go to war against the U.S., but the message was intercepted by Britain in February of 1917, and the Americans would declare war on Germany in April. 1986 now, Alabama Governor George Wallace announces he will not seek a fifth term as governor and will instead retire. Wallace is best remembered for standing in the door to keep the University of Alabama segregated in 1963. He actually was elected governor of Alabama 3 more times after that, and he ran for president 3 times, with his platform essentially being forever segregation. He also ran his terminally ill wife for governor when he was facing a term limit, and then ran the state as a proxy governor until her death in 1968. And yet, by the late 1970s, he was increasingly apologetic to civil rights groups for his earlier actions, and upon winning the governorship again in 1983, made history with the first integrated cabinet in state history, 2 African-American appointments on his cabinet. What can I say? People are complicated. Finally, now we go to 1992 for this.
Security around John Gotti for the first day of jury selection was tight. Gotti is charged with being the boss of the Gambino crime family, ordering the hit on the former boss, Paul Castellano, and 3 others. Gotti has been in jail waiting for his trial to begin for more than a year. Today, he waited a few minutes more. George Santangelo, the lawyer for Gotti's co-defendant, Frank Locascio, was thrown off the case today. The judge ruled that Santangelo had not been picked by Locascio, but assigned to defend Locascio on Gotti's orders.
That was the beginning of the John Gotti trial, which ended today in his conviction in 1992. Convicted on murder and racketeering charges. Not surprising, he was racketeering his own racketeering trial there. The 51-year-old so-called Dapper Don would be sentenced to life in prison, and he would die in prison of throat cancer in 2002. That is your look back in history for today, April 2nd, and I'm Donald Ing.
All right, thanks so much, Don. Well, in other local news, the Fairfield Police Department is looking for help identifying a vehicle, possibly a 2000 to 2004 Nissan Maxima, in connection with a strong-arm robbery and purse snatching that took place in the parking lot of Stop and Shop at 760 Villa Avenue on Easter Sunday at around 3:15 in the afternoon. Now, that suspect, a white male in his mid-20s, had a beard with reddish-brown hair, and police say he approached 2 women in the lot and yanked the purse off of one of them after a brief struggle. Well, if the vehicle is located or you have any additional information, please contact the Fairfield Police Department Detective Bureau at 203-254-4840. And Fairfield police are also looking for a suspect after a robbery at the mobile gas station at 1271 Stratfield Road shortly before 9 p.m. on Sunday. Now, police released a photo of the suspect described as a taller, stocky white male wearing a full gray ski mask, gray pants, brown boots, as well as a black hoodie and carrying a knife in his right hand. Now, he reportedly entered the store through the front door at 8:51 p.m. on Sunday. The man ordered the clerk behind the cash register to open the drawer. Then, after obtaining an undetermined amount of cash from that register, that suspect entered the passenger side of a light gray Chevrolet Silverado pickup truck bearing an unknown Connecticut registration plate. Now, that truck appeared to have a dark, possibly black ladder rack and a tool-style box in the bed of the truck. Now, that Silverado also appeared to be a mid-90s model with the Chevy symbol in the middle of that tailgate. Fairfield police pursued a vehicle matching that description Sunday night, but did not catch it. That truck was last seen on Hawley Avenue, heading towards Main Street in Bridgeport. Anyone who has any additional information can contact Fairfield Police at 203-254-4840. And Connecticut State Police were mourning the death of a trooper late last week and over the weekend. State Police announced the passing of Trooper First Class Kevin Miller as a result of injuries sustained during an on-duty vehicle accident that occurred on I-84 East in the town of Tolland. Now, Miller was assigned to Troop C in Tolland, having previously served at Troop K in Colchester and Troop E in Montville. Well, they said that Trooper Miller was a member of the 108th Training Troop, graduating from the Connecticut State Police Academy on March 19, 1999. Police said, in part, "We are grateful for his dedicated service to the Connecticut State Police and the residents of Connecticut," and they said, "Our thoughts and prayers are with his family and friends during this difficult time." Well, in other news, a Ridgefield Finance Board member was asked and then declined to recuse herself from discussions and voting on a school budget on the grounds that school issues had been part of her social media exchanges that she'd participated in. Well, board member Jessica Mancini said at a recent meeting, "I am able to say whatever I want as a parent." This was after school board vice chair Doug Silver had asked that she abstain from participation in the Finance Board's budget deliberations. Silver argued that Mancini's participation on school budget matters was tainted because she had previously been discussing pertinent issues with people through social media. They said, in part, "Our attorneys advised us we cannot comment on meetings ahead of time," he said. Well, Finance Board Chairman Dave Ulmer replied, in part, "You have legal advice specific to your board. You don't know that it's specific to ours." Mancini said she has made it clear in her social media exchanges that she was not speaking for the Finance Board or as a board member, but as a parent. There's more on that story at theridgefieldpress.com. And Darien police arrested a Norwalk man involved in a motor vehicle accident for allegedly driving under the influence and then interfering with an officer on March 26th. Officers responded to the scene of an accident at Leroy Avenue and Post Road just after 1 in the morning. Police spoke to 3 people who were in one of the cars involved in an attempt to identify that driver. Now, 34-year-old Jose Zuniga told the officer that another occupant of the car had been driving, but through questioning, police determined that Zuniga was the driver. Now, according to officers at the scene, officers noted that Zuniga's eyes were glassy and bloodshot, and he carried the odor of alcohol. Well, while speaking to officers, Zuniga received a phone call from one of the other occupants of that vehicle. Police said Zuniga then began to yell angrily into the phone and walked towards the passenger who had called him. Zuniga believed at the time that that passenger had informed officers that he had been the operator of the car. Well, officers ordered Zuniga to stop several times, but he did not. He was then physically forced to the ground and placed under arrest for interfering with an officer. Zuniga was transported to headquarters, where he was then administered a standardized field sobriety test, which police say he failed to perform to an acceptable standard. He then later refused to take a breath test and was given a court date of April 5th. And opponents of a large affordable housing project proposed for northern Stratford raised concerns last Wednesday night about the integrity of a retaining wall, increased traffic, emergency vehicle access, environmental impact, and potential disruption from construction of a sewer line on that site. Kevin Kelly, an attorney for the town, and Joseph Kubik, an attorney representing the concerned citizens of Stratford, and several neighbors, presented 7 experts in response to a previous presentation by the developer for a 116-unit apartment complex at 795 James Farms Road. While the lawyers argued that the potential harm to public health, safety, and the environment outweigh any benefit from adding the town's affordable housing stock. Well, 3 Stratford residents spoke against the proposal, focusing on traffic, building size, construction impact, and emergency response issues. About 60 opponents attended that March 28th Zoning Commission meeting at Town Hall, and a petition has been submitted against that project, and it's been signed by some 425 people. Now, there's a lot more on that story at StratfordStar.com. We're going to throw it over now to Frank Granito for your Nutmeg Sports Update. Frank.
All right, thank you, Kate. Opening weekend officially has come and gone for the spring season. A couple big games we want to highlight. Let's go to lacrosse. On the boys' side, the defending national champion Darien Blue Wave extend their winning streak to 55 games, a 13-11 victory over out-of-conference foe Yorktown. A big win for Darien, who will get West Hill next on Wednesday, and then round out the week hosting Torrey Pines, who is currently ranked number 7 in the nation out of California. In girls lacrosse, a big upset on the first day of the season as Fairfield Ludlow took down Greenwich 9-8 to kick off the 2018 campaign. A huge win for the Falcons, and Ashley Moynihan led the way with 4 goals. Olivia Duramo scored 3 times as well. One thing we do know about today, as we assume there'll be plenty of postponements coming our way, Trinity Catholic and Stanford baseball has been moved to Tuesday afternoon. We'll have more on that at 2 o'clock as Kevin and I will get you caught up on all of the rescheduling that will take place for Monday's games. For now, though, we'll go back over to Kate.
All right, thanks so much, Frank. And we're going to step out for a break. When we come back, we're going to recap some of the top stories we're following today after this.
At Pamby Motors, we're not worried about being the biggest dealership. We're focused on being the best. We're dedicated to giving you the best experience we can. The Pamby Motors team is here to help you choose the right Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, or Ram in a friendly, pressure-free environment. And right now, during Ram Truck Month, get up to $14,000 off on all in-stock 2017 Ram 1500 pickups. Come in and see us for details. Visit Pamby Motors, Route 7 in Ridgefield, PambyZone.com.
UK Gourmet is the largest specialty grocer in the area, featuring food from England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. Over 80 teas to choose from and a brilliant assortment of biscuits to go with them. Over 70 cheeses from grass-fed cows, which makes a smashing difference in taste. The creamiest chocolate you'll ever taste using no artificial colors or preservatives. So say hooray for UK Gourmet, 78 Stony Hill Road in Bethel, or visit ukgourmet.us.
Had a sports injury or slip and fall that needs immediate care? Coastal Orthopedics Walk-In Urgent Care gives you direct access to orthopedic specialists fast without an appointment. Biking, golf, tennis, soccer, whatever the sports injury is, sprain or fracture, Coastal Orthopedics Walk-In Urgent Care can help. Open 7 days a week now at 3 locations. The iPark Building at 761 Main Avenue, Norwalk, 36 Old Kings Highway South in Darien, or in the Westport Medical Center at 323 Riverside Avenue, Westport. Go to myorthoct.com, like them on Facebook. Had a sport.
Welcome back to this Monday edition of your Coffee Break on the HAN Network. I'm Kate Czaplinski recapping some of the top stories we're following today. 2 Milford firefighters were injured in a house fire Sunday evening that severely damaged a single-family home on Naugatuck Avenue. Now, fire dispatchers received a 911 call at about 6:30 p.m. reporting that fire on the front porch of that home at 903 Naugatuck Avenue. Now, first arriving units encountered a large fire on the first floor that was extending up to the second floor of that 2.5-story home. That, according to Fire Battalion Chief Anthony Fabrizi. Well, a hose line was quickly advanced into that structure in an effort to suppress the fire. However, strong winds fueled the progression of that blaze into the second floor and attic areas of that home. Firefighters fought that stubborn blaze more than 45 minutes. Fabrizi said the majority of the house suffered severe damage, leaving the home uninhabitable by the 3 occupants. Now, one of the residents had tried unsuccessfully to extinguish that fire with a garden hose before firefighters arrived. Fabrizi said that caused a delay in them reporting the fire. 2 firefighters were also injured while fighting that fire. Both were transported on the scene by the fire department paramedics and transported to Milford Hospital for evaluation. Additional information on their condition was not immediately available, but a Milford Red Cross representative did arrive to provide assistance for the displaced occupants. Milford Fire Marshal Division is now investigating the cause of that fire. And 2 men are in custody after a gunpoint home invasion on White Plains Road in Trumbull early Saturday morning. According to police, 30-year-old Juan Rivera and 42-year-old Marvin Allen, both of Bridgeport, broke into a Trumbull home and then threatened the resident with a handgun at around 5 in the morning. Police then pursued the fleeing suspected vehicle into Bridgeport, where it ran off the road and rolled over several times. Both suspects were treated at Bridgeport Hospital for non-life-threatening injuries, and at the scene, police recovered a Smith & Wesson .380 caliber handgun from that vehicle. Now, Rivera and Allen were both charged with home invasion. In addition, Rivera was charged with criminal possession of a firearm, first-degree burglary, threatening, unlawful restraint, and several other criminal and vehicle charges. Now, there were no injuries to anyone at the home or to any police officers in that incident, and no police vehicles were involved in that crash. Bridgeport police and firefighters investigated the crash scene, and Trumbull police are continuing the investigation into that robbery. Police believe that the victim's residence was specifically targeted and was not randomly selected. And in other news, a fight inside of Nutmeg Bowl in Fairfield Saturday night led to shots fired. On March 31st at about 11:59 p.m., Fairfield police received a 911 call from Nutmeg Bowl on Villa Avenue. Officers determined that a verbal argument between 26-year-old Jose Maldonado and another individual occurred inside the bowling alley. The men allegedly made threats to each other before going outside to the parking lot. Police determined that in the parking lot, one man may have attempted to strike the other with his car, and in that process, Jose Maldonado fired a pistol at that car. No one was injured. Officers did locate a bullet hole in the rear driver's side door of that vehicle involved, in addition to a spent shell casing matching a pistol that was then found in a vehicle of one of the subjects involved. Jose Maldonado of James Street in Bridgeport was arrested for reckless endangerment in the first degree and unlawful discharge of a firearm. He's scheduled to appear in court on April 12th. And the Stanford Advocate reports that a former West Hill High School basketball coach, now coaching in New Canaan, was arrested over the weekend after he was allegedly found in possession of 20 bags of heroin. 30-year-old Jose Amor of Davenport Drive was charged with possession of narcotics with intent to sell. Now, he was released after posting a $10,000 bond. Now, the weekend arrest of Amor, who was charged nearly 2 years ago with hindering prosecution for allegedly tipping off one of his basketball players suspected of a shooting in Stamford, resulted from a suspicious person call at West Avenue Shell Station on Friday night, according to Captain Dietrich Hone. Well, when officers arrived, they interviewed Amor outside of his car, and officers looking around said they could see in plain view a partially open container lying on the passenger seat, which appeared to have possible contraband inside. An officer removed that container and found 20 folds of heroin. Well, while Amor was being booked, police say they also found several Percocet pills on Amor, as well as a pill grinder and a straw with powder residue on it. And in other news, on Sunday afternoon, an off-duty state trooper saved a man who had overdosed on opiates. Around 4:30 p.m., Troop G received several 911 calls about a vehicle stopped on the right shoulder of I-95 northbound just prior to exit 36 in Milford, with a male outside of the car seizing. Well, an off-duty trooper was in the area and responded to the scene. Upon arrival, he found numerous passerbys caring for that 22-year-old man who was unresponsive with shallow labored breathing. Well, that trooper recognized numerous signs of opiate overdose and administered his intranasal Narcan. Now, that male then began to regain consciousness shortly after the arrival of EMS. He was transported to Milford Hospital, where he was released a short time later. Now, police say the quick actions of that off-duty trooper, Matthew Hancock, was absolutely paramount in the ability to save that person from serious injury or death. And of course, with all this snow in the last few weeks, exactly when summer break will arrive for most students is a big question. Now, some schools started the morning with a delay, including Monroe and Region 9, but later decided to close. Now, in Ridgefield, today was the 12th snow day that the district has had to call. Our own Ridgefield Press reports that the last day of school is now Thursday, June 28th. One Board of Education secretary also told the press back in March that the district has never had to go to the last day in June in her 20-plus years in town. Now, June 30th is a Saturday, so only one more day remains available as a potential snow day. Now, today's storm also forced Trumbull schools to close for the 9th time this year, an unusually high number for the district. Now, School Superintendent Gary Chalfie said he would meet with school staff officials tomorrow to determine a course of action to make up the latest snow day. Now, currently, the last day of school for students is scheduled to be Thursday, June 21st. Whatever happens, though, Chalfie said that the school system's April break, the week of April 9th, would not be shortened. Now, in Wilton, the school board is going to revise its calendar for next school year, potentially. The Wilton Bulletin reports that this year school started after Labor Day, and students will now be in school until April 27th, although graduation will be held on June 23rd. The last day of school had initially been scheduled for June 15th. Today's storm is expected to chip away at next week's April break in Wilton. The superintendent had said last month that any further snow closings would mean that students would lose April 13th as a vacation day. Of course, you can look for updates, though, at wiltonbulletin.com. And our own New Canaan Advertiser reports that New Canaan Public Schools used a delayed opening just 2 hours so that school was conducted, and it did not count as a snow day today. They have used delayed openings instead of closings for the past 3 snowfalls. But according to the New Canaan Advertiser, it was unusual for school buses to be running this morning when it was snowing so hard. And as we mentioned earlier in the show, one of those buses did get stuck around 10:15 a.m. Now, Fairfield and Darien schools opened on time today, and Fairfield Superintendent of Schools Dr. Tony Jones tweeted that decision before 5 a.m., but later around 9:20, she tweeted an apology for that decision, saying in part, "My apology for the challenging travel situations this morning. We wake up early and assess the weather based on all known information. Ultimately, the decision is mine to make," she said, "and today I just got it wrong. This was a bad early morning snow call." Now, of course, the snow has led to a lot of headaches for folks, but it's also led to some pretty photos from Reading First Selectman Julia Pemberton. She shared some of the prettier scenes with the Reading Pilot, including a snowy photo you see there of the Saugatuck Reservoir in Reading, looking quite peaceful. But on that note, we're going to throw it over to Frank Granito to see what else we can expect for the rest of the week. Frank.
All right, thank you, Kate. Snow tapering off now, so we should possibly be seeing a little bit of sunshine the rest of the day. We'll see increasing cloudiness as we head towards this evening. A high of 44 expected this afternoon, a low of 33 tonight. Rain on the way tomorrow, and it's going to hang around for about 48 hours. We'll see periods of rain throughout the day Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, heavier rain in the morning. It'll lighten up in the later parts of the afternoon, but the big issue on Wednesday will be the increasing wind gusts. Could be up as high as 35 miles per hour. We'll have more on that as the week continues on, and Kevin and I at 2 o'clock will get you caught up on all the postponements and rescheduling as some games now in this early spring season are having to be moved due to this snowstorm. Kate, let's go back over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Frank, and we're going to wrap things up here on your coffee break, as Frank mentioned, Nutmeg Sports at 2 o'clock, and we will see you on time tomorrow at 11 a.m. for your coffee break.